So you are already aware of the topic for discussion today. Shankaracharya's birthday is coming up, or birth anniversary is coming up soon. So I thought that like every year we can have one discussion on this extraordinary personality who is he has left such a indelible stamp on the spiritual firmament of India, which can never be gauged. His importance we can never fathom the tremendous contribution. And so these are special messengers of God. And as you know, every year we try to have a new glimpse into these personalities. So while I was searching for what to discuss, then I came across a wonderful find. I came across a lecture delivered by none other than Swami Turiyananda. So this was also delivered in America. I think most probably it had been published in Prabhupada Bharata in 1913, but I don't know when it was delivered actually. So we will discuss, today our discussion will be based on that. That was a real find. And it has not been published anywhere else. That from the Prabhupada Bharata sometimes they publish in some book form or something, but I could not find that in any other book. So then I scanned the pages, the dossier, but it is edited because that English is quite different from 100 years. So let us start that fascinating. We will gain some wonderful insights through the words of one who himself was a knower of the Supreme Reality. And the influence of Shankaracharya on Swami Turiyananda's life was very great. Previously he thought that this aim of Jivan Mukti, which Shankaracharya has said, he made that the supreme aim of his life. Then after meeting Thakur, of course, he gained new perspectives also. So we will let us start this discussion on this great life by a very great knower of God himself. So we will start by a Sanskrit verse written on Shankaracharya by Swami Abhedanandaji. Abhedanandaji, you also know. Sri Ramakrishna is one of Sri Ramakrishna's disciples. So he says, Shruti Nigadita Marga Sthapanayavataram Jinanaya Bahuvada Bhrantim Unmulayantam Bhuvana Vijaya Khyati Shankara Bhashyakaram. My salutations to that universal being born as Shankaracharya, the world-famous commentator on the scriptures, by whose efforts the sophistries of atheistic thinkers were uprooted and the way of Vedic wisdom cleared and well established. So if you read the commentaries of Shankaracharya, he has argued against the people who were against the Vedic view, because his aim was to establish the Vedic Dharma again. That's why Swami Vivekananda says in this way. So we all know that Shankaracharya was born in that great land, Bharat or India, And from ancient times, India has possessed a unique and distinguishing quality: profound devotion to Dharma. Its seers, saints, sages of this land have, through so much reasoning, so much effort, arrived at the firm conviction that all problems of human beings can be resolved and they can get what all of them are seeking only through the practice of Dharma. Every creature strives for one goal, that is happiness. But true happiness cannot be attained without Dharma. Therefore, a person must steadfastly be devoted to it. But we all know, carried away by the force of past impressions, humans turn away from Dharma out of ignorance and begin to tread the wrong path. So they begin to think too much of themselves, they become egotistic, and then they become afflicted by various types of worldly sorrows and wander about confused without any true goal of life. So, in such a condition, the only well-considered path is to follow the way taught by God Himself and established in the scriptures. So the guides on this path cannot be ordinary people. They are rishis, they are called rishis, munis, saints and sages, whatever you may call. So they are desireless, completely self-contented and wholly free from any selfish motive. And in this lineage of illumined seers, Shankaracharya stands right at the top. He is regarded as a truly extraordinary personage. His vast learning, his tremendous spirituality, his noble and far-reaching fame, and his wondrous life are known to all even today. And through his towering scholarship and spiritual power, he not only upheld the immortal banner of the eternal Sanatana Dharma, Sanatana means Vedic Dharma, but also preserved the continuity of the scriptural tradition and eradicated the other doctrines which were opposed to this Dharma. Such a great personality as Ramana Maharshi describes Shankaracharya as the embodiment of Shiva himself. So Shiva as if appeared in the form of Shankara to lead people to that ultimate bliss, which is oneness with the Supreme Reality. And another name which we are all familiar with, Dr. Radhakrishnan, I'll just quote a little from what he has said. It is impossible to read Shankara's writings, packed as they are with serious and subtle thinking, without being conscious that one is in contact with a mind of a very fine penetration and profound spirituality. With his acute knowledge of the immeasurable world, his stirring gaze into the abysmal mysteries of the Atman, his unswerving resolve to say neither more nor less than what could be proved, Shankara stands out as a heroic figure of the first rank of religious thinkers of medieval India. His philosophy stands out complete, needing neither a before nor an after. It expounds its own presuppositions, is ruled by its own end, and holds all its elements in a stable, reasoned equipoise. This is what he said. among other things. So Shankaracharya's place is not confined to only scholarly and philosophical circles, because they come for the greater good of all humankind. Anyone can find something to learn from them, whatever our station in life. So it has been said there are some thinkers who are like pillars or the threads woven into a cloth. Remove the threads and the cloth will go out of existence. So Shankara and his place in Indian history and thought is like this. Without him, you cannot even think of this. There will be no foundation for our scriptural tradition. The entire ethos and culture of India is permeated by what Shankaracharya preached and taught. Thus, it is impossible to understand the psyche of the Indian mind without understanding what he has taught. And you know, all these words like Nirguna Brahman, Saguna Brahman, Maya, Vidya, Jnana Marga, etc., etc. All these you can trace back, of course, to the scriptures, but it was Shankara who made us understand the true meaning of those things. So now we can go directly to the words of Swami Turiyananda himself. In his lecture, he says, now we will just read from there, and whatever explanation is at all necessary, I have edited so that the language becomes very simple now. So, whenever religion is abused and irreligion prevails, I manifest myself to save the righteous, to put down the evildoers, and to re-establish dharma. I take birth from age to age, in every age. So you know from where these words are. In the Bhagavad Gita, declared by Sri Krishna. So he, Krishna himself, God incarnate, the teacher of mankind, revealed the laws of nature and awakened his disciple Arjuna to his true self on the battle of Kurukshetra some 5,000 years ago. Since that time, we may not have heard these words spoken again in quite the same divine authority. Yet we have witnessed their fulfillment in the history of India. And we will continue to witness that. It can never stop. So manifested in different lands whenever the need has arisen. Not only in India, God incarnates in other countries also, as we know. Nowhere, however, do we see this truth so vividly demonstrated as in India. There can be no doubt about that. Which is the cradle and motherland of so many of the world's religions. So long after Sri Krishna's time, when all manners of cruelty and corruption began to be perpetrated in the name of Vedic religion, there arose Shakyamuni Gautama, the Buddha. With the authority of an incarnation, he thundered against the malpractices of the age and restored purity and compassion to spiritual life. The moral and spiritual force he brought to the world worked powerfully in India for centuries. And students of history know the marvelous transformation it produced throughout the land. Indeed, not only in India, far beyond it also. Now we see, but in India, especially, the influence was there naturally because he was born in India. And during the reign of the great emperor Ashoka, it spread wide and far. Because when kings adopt something, they have that power to spread that thought. So Gautama came, Buddha came, but nothing in this world is permanent. All things are subject to change and reaction. In time, even the lofty doctrine preached by the Buddha became clouded by human ignorance. And once again, inhuman and barbarous practices arose in the name of religion, dragging society towards materialism and superstition. So it is not that these are not there today. You go to any big temple and the pandas and all, they will tell you so many things which even maybe Shankaracharya did not know. So then I continue Turiyananda's words. When the spiritual sky of India had thus grown dark and fearful, there appeared once more a radiant luminary who, by the brilliance of his reasoning and depth of his spirituality, dispelled the darkness and restored clarity and health to the spiritual atmosphere of India. And this was the great Shankaracharya. So we Indians, Swamiji has told that we are great storytellers. And around all these great lives, divine incarnations, saints and sages, we weave around so many stories. So there are many miraculous stories regarding the birth of Shankaracharya also, but we shall not dwell on them here. Sufficient to know that he was born into a very high caste Brahmin family in a village of Kerala, in southern India around 880. But again, this date is also not certain. There is a difference of hundreds of years between scholars. His father, Shiva Guru, was a deeply religious and orthodox devotee whose greatest joy lay in the worship of Shiva, the presiding deity of peace and benevolence. Learned and virtuous, Shiva Guru spent his life in the faithful performances of sacred duties. Yet, one sorrow troubled him. What was that sorrow? That he did not have a child. So in the Indian tradition, it is said that there are three kinds of rinas, Deva Rina, Pitri Rina and all these things. So, for repaying the Pitri Rina, it is said that a child is required. So he was thinking, he was sorrow on that account. And he consulted his devoted wife, who also shared his sorrow at being childless. Then Shiva Guru resolved to undertake the austerities prescribed in the scriptures to obtain a son through the compassion of the Lord. Retiring to a solitary place suited for worship, he devoted himself to rigorous penances, fasting, doing chanting of God's name, continuous prayer, etc. So one night, while absorbed in sincere supplication, he beheld in a dream his Ishta Devta, who appeared before him and said, his Devta was Shiva. So Shiva said, "Rise, my son, I am well pleased with you. Your desire will be fulfilled. I myself will be born as your son." So overjoyed by this wonderful vision, Shiva Guru returned home and narrated his vision to his wife. And in due course, Shankaracharya was born. Having received him through the grace of Shiva, they named him Shankara, which is another name for Shiva. So, naturally, Shankaracharya, like any other boy, He grew up, but he was extraordinary even from his very young age. When he was 5 years old, his parents began to think seriously about his education. For among Hindus, it is customary to send a child to school at about that age. Nowadays, of course, it is much more earlier. They start planning even before a child is born. So, before he is sent to school, there is a ceremony called Vidyarambha. Vidya plus Arambha, Vidyarambha. That is the inception of education. So, most of you know that the lives of Hindus are so closely interwoven with religion that scarcely anything is undertaken without some sort of puja, some sort of worship. That's why you find so many ceremonies marking each stage of life. Each has a deep meaning. Each signifies a vital transition. So, it's unique. When we were there, we thought every country would be like this, but after leaving India, you can understand the uniqueness of India. So, just for our information, this is not. I will just give some details because it is very interesting. So, it is not a part of Turiyanandaji's lecture, but I am just for our information also. I will present before you some representative examples of the kind of sacred rites or sanskaras that traditionally mark each stage of a Hindu's life. So first is Garbhadhan, conception rite, a prayerful rite performed by the parents, sanctifying the intention to bring a child into the world with purity and responsibility. Then another is Simantonayana, parental blessing, ceremonies performed during pregnancy for the protection and well-being of the mother and the unborn child. Third is Jata Karma, birth ceremony. Immediately after birth, sacred mantras are whispered into the infant's ear, welcoming him to the earthly life. Then is the Namakarana, naming ceremony. This is generally held on the 11th or 12th day, when the child receives a name chosen according to tradition, astrology or family lineage. So see, four sanskaras are over before a child is 11 years old. Then comes Annaprashana, first feeding of solid food. First ceremonial feeding of cooked rice, symbolizing the child's entry into the world of nourishment and growth. Then comes Chuda Karna, first hair cutting, shaving of a child's head. But it signifies something. It is not just like that. This shaving signifies the removal of past impurities and the beginning of a fresh life. After this comes Vidyarambha, commencement of education, when the child is introduced to letters and learning, often by tracing sacred symbols like Om. His hand is held and he is made to trace on a plate of rice. Then comes Upanayana. So Upanayana actually, it was earlier done to all the three castes, Brahmana, Kshatriya and Vaishya. Nowadays it is only for Brahmins. So that is called the sacred thread ceremony, marking the beginning of a disciplined student life under a teacher. Then comes Vivaha, marriage ceremony, a major sacrament sanctifying the union of two individuals for dharma and shared spiritual growth. That is the meaning. Not for going on this cruise, that cruise. So, then comes, after the retreat of the responsibility of the life is over, householder life, then comes vanaprastha, retirement into contemplation, a transition from household responsibilities to a life of simplicity, reflection and spiritual pursuit. And last of all comes sannyasa, renunciation, the final stage where one formally renounces worldly ties and dedicates oneself solely to the practice of God realization. But that you can or you cannot, it is an optional thing. So, after death, also there is something, antyeshti, final rites, performed after death, guiding the departed soul on its onward journey. So that is the tradition. Just there is nothing like this in the whole world. So we'll continue with Swami Turiyananda's narration, the lecture. The seers of ancient India, through the light of spirituality and truth, clearly perceived that human life was not meant merely for the gratification of the senses, but for a higher purpose. They observed that the enjoyments to which human beings cling, eating, sleeping, etc., are not unique to human beings. All animals share them. So in these things, there is little difference between a man and an animal. But to human beings alone is given the power to distinguish good and evil, to restrain and master their passions, to act with conscience and determination, and thereby to make themselves completely free from all kinds of suffering. By rising above all bondage, they can know their real self and transcend the dualities of this relative world, thus fulfilling the true purpose of life. And this is possible for human alone. So they should strive for this noble end rather than surrender themselves lifelong to the dictates of their senses and thus remain no better than animals. So understanding this truth and realizing it in their own lives, our ancient rishis enjoined in the Shastras, that is the scriptures, that human life is divided into 4 stages. Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasa, each with its own duties and disciplines. So first stage, student life. Brahmacharya literally means following Brahman, following Vedas, and living the life of a religious student. So we all know that the best time for learning is that time. The mind is completely fresh, receptive, eager to know. And the impressions which are gained then, they remain throughout the life. Therefore, the scriptures tell us that children should be taught the truth and moral principles then itself, because that will guide them when they become adults. Not only that, the pupils were to live in the home of their teacher, constantly in his or her company, learning by his example how to live rightly and form one's character. That is extremely important. And when they have grown sufficiently mature, have become well versed in all the branches of knowledge and are able to think for themselves, they should return to their homes and then carry on whatever they want to do. So Shankaracharya was in the first stage. His father lost no time in preparing the way for his son. On an auspicious day, he had him duly initiated, led him to the abode of a competent teacher, made to stay with him. So Shankaracharya from his infancy had shown unmistakable signs of tremendous genius and spiritual promise. So he began to study the scriptures and all their auxiliaries also in the traditional manner. But he was extraordinary. His memory, intellect was unbelievable. So he mastered them all in a very short time. In a few years, he became a master of every branch of learning which was cultivated. And his name spread far and wide. See, we would not have believed this. We would have thought as stories. But Swami Vivekananda showed us that this can happen. It is possible. 30 years, he was just 30 years when he went to the parliament. 30 years, no? He was, I think, 30 years only when he went to the parliamentary election. How much can you learn in that time? There was practically nothing he did not know. Unbelievable. So he became known far and wide as an extraordinary scholar when he was just very young, a young boy. Scholars from distant regions came to meet him. Shankaracharya were delighted by his gentle behavior and simple manner of life and returned deeply impressed by his vast scholarship and rare ability to explain these truths which they had never seen before. That was his speciality. So in this way, Shankara soon became well known as a great exponent of the scriptures. One day his father came, and after witnessing his son's exceptional virtues, both of character and knowledge, he was filled with joy. So now he asked the teacher that my boy's education is complete. Can I take him? Teacher did not want to let him go because where will you find such a pupil? But what could he do? Okay, if you want to take him, take him. So thus ended the 5th year of Shankara's stay with the teacher. Now he was just 10 years old. But he was already an authority. Not only a great scholar, he became the authority in all matters of learning. Not only he had read and assimilated all these difficult works, he began to discuss them and even started writing commentaries. His method of reasoning was unique. He never left a subject until he made it perfectly clear and accessible. So we may think, how is it accessible? All these commentaries on Gita or Upanishad. But because we don't know the language, if we have a little grounding in the language and if we are ready to, we have the background knowledge to understand the scriptures, then we will see that the way he has explained, there cannot be a simpler way of explaining in a short way. He did not have the time to write huge commentaries. No, he lived for such a short time. So in the few words, you can see that there is hardly any way of explaining them more simply than he has done, and such abstruse matters. So now he returned home, returned to his parents. Students now began to flock to him for instructions, and he began teaching. He trained many disciples in all branches of knowledge and soon established for himself a prosperous and influential position in society. So he had everything which an ordinary person can desire. Honor, fame, friends, health, education, character, everything. But these people are not just born for that. So yet Shankaracharya was not happy. He began to reflect. It was true that he had learned much and become famous. But had he become truly learned, had he solved the problem of life and death, He had read many things in the scriptures, but had he realized them? If not, what is the value of such learning? So he understood deeply that an ounce of realization is worth more than tons of theories. And as he looked around, his sorrow increased. Society was in a pitiable condition. There were many learned men, but their learning was confined to books. They could speak well and explain the scriptures, but they taught something else, did something else. They did not practice what they taught. Actually, they were only interested in pursuing wealth and pleasure. Seeing this, Shankara became anxious. His sense of responsibility was so great that he blamed himself for this state of things. And he resolved to become an example for all, like the great Buddha. Swami Vivekananda said, no, Buddha did not do all what he did for himself. He was so terribly pained at the suffering of humans that he wanted to alleviate that. So he felt that without spiritual regeneration there was no hope for society. But how was that to be accomplished? So Shankara began to think. Then a sudden event changed the course of his life. His father died. And this passing away of his father brought a profound transformation in Shankara's mind and his destiny. So Shankara performed the funeral rites of his father following the injunctions of the scriptures. But outwardly, though he looked calm, inwardly there was a change. He felt something was stirring. This was a force that was to transform his life completely. So he had loved his father dearly, and the sudden removal of one so dear struck him to the core. He began to reflect on the mysteries of life and death. He grew deeply serious and resolved that he must discover the truth once for all, whatever the cost. And he knew that such a quest demanded total dedication of heart, mind and soul. He knew that the Upanishads declare that by knowing the Paramatman alone does one transcend death. There is no other way, but only renunciation. Now these teachings shone before him with irresistible force. A burning desire for renunciation arose in him. He longed to give up everything for the sake of self-knowledge. That meant taking the vows of monasticism. But his mother was still there. Now what to do? So there is a story regarding that also. His mother said, nothing doing. No renunciation, my boy. You have to stay with me. So what could Shankara do? Then the story you know, most of you. That once he was bathing in the river, a crocodile caught him and was carrying him away. So Shankara called out to his mother, Mother, I am going now, I am gone. At least now you give me the permission to take up sannyasa. Otherwise, maybe by that this crocodile will free me. So that way he got the permission and he became a monk. So it is said that in that time, when he was overtaken by intense vairagya, he composed what is now famous, the hymn which is now famous as Moha Mudgara. Moha we know, delusion, attachment, infatuation, ignorance, everything. Mudgara means a hammer. So Moha Mudgara means the hammer that shatters delusion. The blow that breaks the spell of worldly attachment. So Turiyananda, after saying this, he gives us the translation of some of the verses, which I will read. Shankaracharya says in that hymn, "What is the use of craving wealth and possession? Not a particle of true happiness lies in them. Even a son may become a source of danger to the rich." So the proverb goes. Who is your wife? Who is your son? The world is indeed a strange place. To whom do you belong, and from where have you come? Brother, reflect on the truth of all this. Kaste kanta kaste putra sansaroyamativa vichitra. That is the original. Be not proud of wealth, of relatives or of youth. Mahakuru dhanajana yauvana garvam. Time steals them all in a twinkling of an eye. So fleeting, so uncertain are they. Knowing this, detach yourself quickly and enter into the realization of Brahman. In enemy or in friend, in son or in kin, take no thought of quarrel or alliance. Be even-minded towards all if you desire to attain the universal state without delay. Unstable as water upon a lotus leaf is the life of man. But even a moment's company of sages becomes a boat to cross the ocean of birth and death. Day and night, evening and morning, autumn and spring, they come again and again. Time passes, life ebbs away, yet the wind of hope does not subside. Hoping against hope, what we call. Worship the Lord, O ignorant one. The body grows wrinkled, the hair turns grey, the mouth becomes toothless, and the staff in the hand trembles. Yet the cup of desire remains unchanged. Worship the Lord, O ignorant one. This is Bhajagovindam Mudamate. A child is absorbed in play, the youth is absorbed in passion, the old man is absorbed in anxiety. But nobody turns his mind to the Supreme Lord. Where there is birth, there is death. Again and again one lies in the mother's womb. This is the manifest sorrow of the world. How can you cross this shoreless ocean of the world without the grace of God? Therefore, O ignorant one, worship the Lord, worship the Lord. So just a small portion. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janane jatare shayanam. So Shankaracharya was not the one to speak something else and do something else. He not only wrote these verses of renunciation, but he also resolved to live in perfect conformity with them. He told his mother that unless a man dies while living, he can never be free from the fear of death. And the scriptures teach that sages die even while living. How? By taking the vows of sannyasa. That is the significance. You know, in Bible Jesus says, one who loses his life for my sake shall find it. So he finally got the permission, his mother finally yielded, but she made a condition that Shankaracharya would come to her before her death and would also perform her final rites, which was actually not allowed by a monk. But Shankaracharya did that. And there were so many great souls who also criticized. So that is our, that is human being. Even Shankaracharya, Vivekananda have been criticized in this world. So Shankaracharya accepted the command of his mother. after consoling her in every way, he took leave of everybody, set out on a pilgrimage, seeking a guru, a true knower of Brahman, so that in his company and under his guidance he also might realize that state. He travelled through many regions, eventually reached the banks of the sacred Narmada, where he met a great soul, Gaudapada, an aged monk living in a cave. Shankaracharya himself was a very great soul, so he recognized that this was a person who could help him. But Gaudapada, although he was delighted to see a person like Shankara, he said that he had taken a vow to remain completely absorbed in Brahman from now on, and told Shankaracharya to go to his disciple Govindapada. Shankaracharya went to him and surrendered himself completely. Govindapada, deeply pleased with his purity, intellect and sincerity, accepted him as a disciple, initiated him into sannyasa. All these things most of you know. Now Shankara devoted himself to profound meditation. He strove to merge speech into thought, thought into intellect, intellect into the soul, and finally all those into the Supreme Self. And we all know, for an aspirant of his caliber, his purity, it did not take him long to realize the supreme reality. Having attained self-knowledge, Shankara became free and blissful. He bowed to his teacher and then asked him what his duties were. So Govindapada, realizing that Shankaracharya had been born with a special purpose, commanded him to preach the knowledge he had realized. Like Sri Ramakrishna commanded Swamiji. Swamiji did not want to do. He said, I want to remain absorbed in Samadhi only. He said, nothing doing. So Shankara, whose heart overflowed with compassion for all beings, joyfully accepted this responsibility and began his mission. So we have already discussed what was the condition of the masses, even the learned classes, and if this was the condition of those who were supposed to guide society, what can be said for other people? There were no fixed principles in life. The only aim was enjoyment, eat, drink and make merry. Into this atmosphere, Shankara started working. He began to spread the light of spirituality. He sought out the best minds of the age, convinced them through reason, example and the power of his realization, and through all these he influenced their followers. Thus he travelled across the length and breadth of India. Just like Swamiji, there is so much common between these two lives. So, through his vast learning, irresistible logic and above all his radiant personality, he succeeded in checking the tide of materialism that had swept over India. And he had many brilliant disciples. Among all these, it is said that the greatest was Sri Shankaracharya, who earlier was called Mandana Mishra. Mandana Mishra was a renowned scholar, an intellectual giant, but he was a follower of the Mimamsa path. So Shankara, hearing of his fame, went to meet him. At first Mandana refused. I don't want to do anything with a sannyasi. They leave everything, leave all the responsibilities, etc., etc. But eventually he agreed. Actually it is said that he did not agree. Shankara jumped over his wall and came. And the two engaged in a profound philosophical discussion that continued for several days. Actually it was a debate. The condition was one who will lose will accept the other's view. Now these two were exceptionally brilliant people of the age, who will be the judge?
Right.
So Mandana Mishra's wife was also an extraordinary lady. So it was proposed that she will become the judge. And Shankaracharya agreed. And she was so impartial that after the debate was over, she told Shankaracharya is the winner. And there are many stories. There are stories that they had two garlands. One in Mandana's and one in Shankaracharya's around his neck. And they said that one will begin to lose, his body will, out of anxiety, his body will start emitting heat and the garland will wither. So all these stories are there. Anyway, so Mandana now became Sureshwaracharya, one of the greatest disciples of Shankaracharya. And Sureshwaracharya has written many works on Advaita Vedanta also. So anyway, we cannot spend too much time on that. Now, when Mandana Mishra was converted, his name was known far and wide. That created a revolution in society. And Shankaracharya and other learned disciples also, with their help, he started spreading Vedantic teachings, transforming the minds of people towards higher ideas and re-establishing the Vedic teachings. That is the main. So while his work was progressing in this way, Shankara felt a deep longing to see his mother. He set out at once and reached home. Maybe he had a premonition that the time has come. So he found his mother gravely ill. She was overjoyed to see him, but she passed away soon. Shankara served her and performed all the rites exactly as she had wished. So Turiyananda says, here we see again the truth of the saying that prophets are seldom honored in their own land. So when he did this performance of rites, Shankara was treated harshly not only by the village people but also by his own relatives. But he was knower of God, he did not care, he was always even-minded. Then he left his native place and once more started his work. He urged his disciples to continue preaching among all classes of people and to establish schools and centers throughout India. So, having restored order and peace in many regions and seeing people once again engaged in virtuous living, he turned towards the Himalayas, seeking the quiet rest he so greatly needed. But that rest was not to last long. In the silence of the lofty peaks, surrounded by the very atmosphere of his own sublime thoughts expressed in his writing and commentaries, which even today, more than 1,000 years later, are revered by the greatest scholars of India, Europe and America, Shankara allowed his prana to merge into the supreme reality. So it is said that he was just 32 years old. Even younger than our Swamiji. So this is the life in a very short way, and then Turiyananda continues, just a little more is there. We should know Shankaracharya did not preach a new doctrine, as Swami Vivekananda did not preach a new doctrine. Vivekananda, after he came back, he said, from America after he returned, he said, I have not spoken one word other than what is in the Vedanta. So Shankaracharya also simply expounded the eternal philosophy of the Vedanta, of the Upanishads. He wrote commentaries on 16 foundational texts, collectively known as the Prasthana Traya or the three Prasthanas. Prasthanas mean the three authoritative sources of Vedanta. What are these sources? You know, Ankura is nodding his head.
Upanishad, Gita and the Brahma Sutra.
Wonderful. So his commentary on the Brahma Sutras, the Sharirika Bhashya, is specially profound and exhaustive. He is supposed to have written commentaries on the 12 major Upanishads and of course the Bhagavad Gita also. He also wrote commentaries on Vishnu Sahasranama and some other minor works are also attributed to him. Many original works like Atma Bodha, Vivek Chudamani, all these things are there. So the purpose of Vedanta philosophy is to free human beings from the bondage of life by awakening them to their real nature, the Supreme Self. In essence, Vedanta declares that Brahman alone is real, all else is unreal, and the individual soul is none other than that Supreme Reality, which is one without a second. The real nature of an individual soul is existence, knowledge and bliss. Therefore, actually we are immortal, ever conscious, ever free and full of bliss. So this is called Nitya Buddha Mukta Swabhava. Just as the one sun appears as many when reflected in different pots of water, and as the one sky seems divided when enclosed in many rooms, so the one indivisible Atman appears as many in different bodies created by Maya. As ornaments of various names and forms are all essentially gold, so the Paramatman is one, appearing as many through Maya. As a wave is nothing but water, though it has a name and form of its own, so names and forms are only apparent, and they are created by Maya. So this is how Turiyananda is, in conclusion, he is just summarizing the teachings of Vedanta. This Maya is the power of Brahman. It is beginningless ignorance, endowed with three gunas, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Through their countless combination, Maya projects the entire universe. And if you want to ask whether Maya is real or unreal, it is not real, because it vanishes when the Atman is realized. But it is not unreal also, because it appears to exist as long as one identifies himself with the mind and body. So that's why it is called Maya is inscrutable, indefinable. You cannot define Maya. Yet this much is certain, it disappears when Brahman, which is one without a second, is realized. He who knows Brahman as his own self becomes free from all fear, because fear arises only from the perception of another. When we can only fear something which is not us. You cannot fear yourself. So the knower of truth sees everything as the self. So whom will he fear? That is the secret. When one sees all as one, and that one as his one self, of whom shall he be afraid? Thus Vedanta teaches fearlessness. It teaches discrimination between the real and the unreal, and it teaches renunciation of the unreal. It teaches self-control, inward and outward. It teaches patience, concentration, and unwavering faith in the truth. It urges one to hear of the Atman, to reflect upon it, to meditate upon it. Shrotavya, mantavya, nididhyasitavya. Tavya means should do. Like kartavya means what? What you should do. Similarly here also. So, the moment the Atman is realized, all the knots of the heart are cut asunder, all doubts are dispelled, and all duties are fulfilled. This is also a very famous verse. No? No problem. Blessed indeed is he who attains this. Blessed is he who strives for it. May the dispenser of all good turn our minds towards this path. May we all become truly happy and blessed. This is how we end this. So we can also end. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.